Thank you for joining today's webinar, Insurance Claim Processing with Smart Capture Enabled RPA. As you can see here on the screen, my name is Brandon Campbell. I'm a Director of Business Development at Ephesoft. Today, we're going to look at the ways that Ephesoft Smart Capture can positively impact claim insurance processing in the insurance industry, particularly in conjunction with an automation platform like an RPA system. I'm going to start with a quick overview of the industry. I'm going to move on to an introduction to the Ephesoft Smart Capture product, which is called Transact. And then I'm going to spend most of our time walking through a live demonstration of Transact, working in tandem with UiPath's RPA solution, for which Ephesoft is a technology partner. If you have any questions, please do enter them into the Q&A window. I'll answer as many inquiries as possible at the end of the session, and I'll follow up by email for all others that we don't get a chance to get to. This recording will be available, or a recording of the webinar will be available, and it'll be emailed out after the end of the webinar. Now, according to the National Association for Insurance Commissioners, last year written insurance premiums in the United States came to $1.15 trillion. With nearly every person in America purchasing at least one insurance policy, competition for business is obviously incredibly intense. So there's approximately 6,000 domestic insurance companies in the US, and they employ about 2.6 million people, which means that now more than ever, it's incredibly crucial for insurers to maintain that high level of customer satisfaction so that they can A, sustain their recurring business, and B, attract new policyholders. Unfortunately, as you might be aware for these company stakeholders, profit margins on insurance policies are incredibly thin. So it's natural for the businesses to look for other areas of the operation where cost may be saved without necessarily sacrificing the quality of the customer's experience. So most of these companies are turning to the paper-based process of the insurance claim workflow as the ideal candidate for efficiency gains and for cost savings. So let's consider home or renter's insurance to start. Making a claim against a policy like a homeowner's insurance policy typically occurs for that customer at a time of great stress. When you do damage to your residence, whether through a natural disaster or something along those lines, it causes at the very least inconvenience and at the worst relocation while home repairs are made. So it follows that the more quickly you can process a claim, finalize your decisions, make your payments, transfer your funds, the better it is for the homeowner and for that insurance customer, which in turn translates into higher customer satisfaction ratings. Well, with Ephesoft Smart Capture, which is the intelligent capture tool that I'm going to be demonstrating shortly, insurance companies can automate the document workflow of claim ingestion and review by providing more immediate access to those actual claim-related documents and to that customer correspondence. So through a combination of machine learning and rules-based logic, Ephesoft Transact is going to automatically categorize, separate, and extract data from insurance documents, no matter how they're sent to that insurance company's intake site. So there's no need for barcode application, for document preparation, or any type of manual data entry. And we've found that implementing an intelligent capture software like Transact improves processing performance specifically for the insurance industry by about 80%. So we know that a major part of the business of insurance, if you've ever had to file a claim yourself, revolves around document processes and the data that lies within them, what the actual end customer is entering into these forms. And all of this is highly repeatable, so it has huge potential for automation, which is where an RPA system is a great candidate for this types of use case. And working seamlessly with an RPA system, Ephesoft Smart Capture aims to reduce that processing time, like I said, by up to 80%, increase efficiency, and eliminate human errors in this document-centric industry. So digging into the actual technology behind Ephesoft Transact, let's break down the method by which the application would handle these unstructured documents in this type of workflow. So that first step in the claim processing workflow is actually kicking off a batch process in Transact. And that's how we refer to the electronic documents working their way through the project itself. So if you hear me reference the word batch, that's what I'm referring to. So now kicking off this process is represented by a few different actions. For one, Transact can act as the point of document on-ramping for a downstream workflow. So maybe we are actually monitoring a hot folder where claims that are scanned at a mailroom in bulk get sent to. Or maybe we're monitoring an email inbox or a fax server folder for new and incoming claims. Transact can also operate, however, as an activity within a robotic process, so as a part of that midstream workflow. And in the case of the demonstration I'm going to walk through, the first step of this type of document processing workflow could be an API call to a Transact server from an RPA system, something like a UiPath or a Blue Prism. And this web services call could actually send the documents that are used in that workflow within that robotic process from the RPA server to that Transact server to run through the pre-configured project. So there's a couple of different ways this workflow could kick off. After that, we move on to image processing, where basic image enhancements are applied to that claim file, to the pages, any associated document that come with it. It's rendered fully text searchable through an embedded OCR engine, and it's ready to be analyzed. And then after that, the Smart Capture platform is going to assemble all of those pages that we split apart and OCR'd into single documents and categorize them based on full content analysis. So with Ephesoft Transact, we're actually using unique classification algorithms that do not require the creation of rigid document templates in order to accurately categorize what we're working with. You don't have to build out templates for every single document that you're working with. We're looking at all of the content that exists on those pages. And then once they're sorted, Transact is going to utilize a combination of pre-configured rules-based logic and machine learning in order to identify and extract key pieces of metadata. So these predefined extraction methods includes things like key value pair extraction, where the application searches for an anchor value near a desired field. We're going to utilize things like pattern matching using regular expressions, fuzzy database lookups, table extraction. And then once we've analyzed the content, the documents are routed to a validation queue for verification or for remediation of that machine extracted index values. So fields are going to be highlighted in a validation user interface based on the confidence score or the certainty of correct information that's determined by Transact. So for example, if after this textual analysis, Transact's output for the field policy number or the claim number on an insurance file falls below a designated confidence score, the built-in document processing workflow is going to trigger that document and that specific field to be highlighted and flagged for review by an end user. But if validation isn't required, then an actual end user may not even ever interact with the Transact server. That end user that's working with that assisted or monitored robot may not even have to view the Transact server. It could be a completely skipped step. So the final step in this workflow is going to look a little bit different depending on how the project has been configured. Now, in a standalone capacity, Transact may simply export the content, which is represented by those now sorted documents and their associated data files, to its final destination. So this can be something like a records management system, a content repository like Box, or it can simply mean sending the document to a hot folder for some downstream system to pick up and use. But when used in conjunction with an RPA system, this export routing step is replaced by the API call to the Transact server that has that batch of documents processed. So in this case, the metadata and the documents are now automatically available for the robotic process as soon as the batch is complete. So now, without further ado, I promised just a couple of slides. Let's take a look at a live example showing how Transact and an RPA system like UiPath work together seamlessly for a claims processing workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at an insurance company, Aflac, for example. So this very well-known insurance provider made famous by a very prodigious duck has about 50 million customers. And so looking at their website here, we're going to find claim forms broken down by state available for download. So if I click on just Alabama, for example, I'm going to see here all of the forms that are available, and there are quite a few by state. And if I open up one of the forms I've already downloaded and filled out with some dummy data, in this case, it's what have I got here? A claim appeal form. You can see that the method for submitting this claim, if we look here in the middle, is by mail or fax only. So either of these actions taken by that customer is going to result in this paper document that's been printed out being physically submitted to an intake site for the company Aflac in this case. Then the claim and any of its supporting documentation, maybe we had to submit some additional doctor's notes or summary files or field reports, are going to be sent into that intake site. They have to be physically sorted. They need to be categorized by claim type. They have to be scanned back in, manually indexed through data entry, and then routed to whichever department might be responsible for review, for research, for arbitration, approval or denial of this particular document type. There's about 1 million steps before anyone even makes an approval or denial, which is time for that actual insurance customer in waiting. And with this process as is, we have all of these manually intensive steps to look at. There's a lot of potential for human error before we even get to the meat of the claim processing. So let's imagine that only 1/3 of Aflac's customers submit a claim each year. That's still potentially more than 16 million claims, all of which are handled manually annually. If I can rhyme like crazy here. So what I'm going to show you today is actually how Ephesoft, which could be acting as the front-end capture or that point of onboarding for the RPA workflow like I walked through earlier, would tackle that insurance claim submission and process. So to start, I'm going to open up the UiPath Studio, which I have in front of me here, which is the graphical user interface that's intended for building and for designing these automation workflows. So UiPath is an RPA company and an Ephesoft technology partner, as I mentioned earlier. And with all of the opportunity for automation within the insurance industry, specifically around claim processing, it makes sense to highlight how these two technologies, Ephesoft as the front-end capture, UiPath for the process automation and expedition, work together in this particular use case. And so the project I'm currently displaying, which is represented by this flow chart here, denotes the process flow that we're going to follow for this particular demonstration. So what I have outlined just in this little center canvas is a very simple flowchart workflow that's very linear, that starts off with a folder watch, claim processing activity, and ends with a claim being sent out to somebody via email. And I've configured these different activities, which I'll walk through here shortly. Now, Ephesoft Transact is available as several different activities within UiPath. So if you go to UiPath Go, you can download the Ephesoft package and simply upload it to the UiPath Studio through this Manage Packages activity here in the toolbar. And if I do a quick search on the activities panel for Ephesoft or for Transact, I'm going to see within the Integrations tab of the activities all of the different activities that are available for this particular use case. So we have things like document classification, field extraction, initiating the different batches, which, as you remember, I referenced earlier, are the unique projects within Ephesoft, uploading batches of documents. And then this transact scope activity is to actually bring it all together to point to the appropriate server. So what I've done here is if I open up this folder watch and claim processing activity, I've got another little mini flow chart that I'm going to walk through to show you what we've done to configure this particular project. So in this use case, we're imagining that documents are being sent to a watch folder from, let's say, from a mailroom. In batch, we have someone running through all of these documents in batch, just throwing them into a high-speed scanner, and they get routed into a watch folder. At which point, the RPA system is going to look at that folder, pick up those documents, and send them over to the Transact server as we've configured. So we start off with the transact scope activity, where we configure the connection to define which server we're connecting to and the username and password. From there, we're going to go ahead and extract fields based on the project that we've defined. So in this case, because I've already said what server I'm going to be working with, I can select the different projects that are available as a part of this particular server. So depending on what you're connected to and what projects have been configured is going to determine what you can select from the drop-down list. So I've built an insurance claim processing project, which we're going to open up shortly. And I've defined where we're going to be pulling information from. and then just wrote a simple little line here to show as a part of the output, so we can show how we're going to extract information. We're going to go ahead and write an output that's going to call out those field names from what we've extracted. And we've done so by simply creating a little variable, if I can move this over here, a little variable for the fields that will write as a part of the output down here in the bottom left corner of the screen. So what I'm going to do, since we're just trying to show this live here, is simply run this workflow and then take a look at the Transact server. So if I open up the Transact server where I am connected to, or where I've configured the connection for the UiPath workflow, I'm going to go ahead and open up the Administrator panel and take a look at the Batch Class Management tab here. And if I log in, now what this is going to do for me is it's going to show me what projects I've configured and the project that I've defined, or the batch class that I've defined to run through this particular project. So in this case, I'm going to scroll down to my insurance claim processing project. Oops, and I'm going to minimize this because it looks like the workflow just finished running. I'm going to go ahead and open up my insurance claim processing project. And I can see here a list of document types that have been configured for this particular project. And in this case, we only have one document type because we're just looking at claim forms. For the purposes of this use case, I'm not necessarily looking at supporting documentation, but we can define as many document types as we want within this particular user interface. There's no limitation on how many unique document types we should be looking for a project. We actually currently have a batch class in production working on mortgage documents that's processing 600 unique document types within a single project. So no limitations in terms of configuration here. But what I've done is I've created one document type, a claim form, and in order to teach Transact how to ingest and interpret and view these claim forms, I simply dragged and dropped sample files into this upload learn files bucket. And what happened once I did that is that Transact is going to take all of the information, all of the text that exists on the pages of those sample files, and start to create a learning model to define what it looks for when it's looking for this particular document type. So I'm just going to open up this document type to see the indexed fields that I trained. And in this case here, I'm just looking for 4 unique fields within this document. I'm looking for the date of the form, the policy number, the claim number, and the last name. And all of this was pre-configured fairly quickly using some flexible logic, using key value pairs, so that I can very quickly pull this information out of the documents without having to have an end user manually index this information. So now that we've had a quick look at the project, I'm going to hop back into the UiPath Studio. And since this workflow finished running, I'm going to go ahead and look at the output down here at the bottom left corner of the screen. And I can see here that that simple line I wrote to write a line in that output to make sure I'm getting the appropriate values here. It pulled out a policy number, a claim number, a last name, and a date for me. So now if I remember, the last step within this particular workflow that we were running here in UiPath was to actually send the claim via email. And I simply hard-coded this line to send the email to myself so I could view it very quickly. But in the case of production, we could use a variable argument in order to automatically send the claim form to the appropriate person based on the type of claim that we extracted using those pieces of metadata that we pulled or using that document type. So in this case here, I've got a new claim submission, and if I open it up, I'm going to see here that the claim is for Johnson. We've got the claim number, the policy number, any other information. I believe it was the date. And so I'm going to hop back into the UiPath interface, take a look at the output that we pulled from this particular workflow. And I can see here that the information matches what I was pulling up in that sample claim form that was sent to me. So very quick run through on the potential for creating a document aware or enabling document data within a robotic process automation tool. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click over to the Q&A really quickly. If you have any questions, please do enter them into the Q&A, and I'll try to answer as many as I can right now in this moment. All right, so one question was, can Ephesoft Transact detect and extract content from complex tables such as nested tables, tables which extend to multiple pages, or tables containing merged split cells? So yes, Ephesoft has a tabular extraction component as a part of it. It's fairly easy to configure. We can also perform auto detection on table extraction. The complexity of the table depends on the configuration of the project. So when you have nested tables or tables that expand into multiple pages, we would simply need to make sure that we're configuring the project according to those tables. And if those tables vary from document type to document type, that would just be a simple configuration. There's also the potential to incorporate scripts into existing projects to help with complexity as well. So we'd want to take a look at some of the samples of what type of documents that you're working with in order to determine the feasibility and the accuracy of the extraction of the data we were looking at. I also had a question about extracting barcodes, 2D or 3D, or QR codes. Yes, we can absolutely ingest, extract, identify information that exists within barcodes. Looks like a question, can the software capture actions that are completed on a laptop or PC and store them and automatically create a process flow? No, so I just want to be very clear on that. Ephesoft in and of itself is not an RPA system. We simply integrate with most RPA systems on the market, whether it be through a direct integration like an available activity within that applications like Design Canvas, like a UiPath or Blue Prism, or if we were performing kind of an external integration or like a handshake with the application, we could simply export the documents to a watch folder that RPA system can pick up. So in and of itself, Ephesoft does not act as an RPA system where it will monitor an end user's actions and then mirror it. You have to put in the configuration work yourself. However, it is a low-code application, and most of the configuration can be done through drag and drop without having to know how to write any code or any script yourself. Quick question on how many documents are required for training from a given form. That greatly depends on the complexity of the documents that you're working with. If you're dealing with standardized forms that just vary from version to version, 1 or 2 samples is more than sufficient. If you're looking at highly variable content like emails and you're looking for key values within emails or more unstructured documents, maybe 10 to 15 samples is a great start. So a lot of how many documents you need to train per sample depends on the variability of what you're working with. But you're looking more in the double or single and double digit numbers of samples, not the triple digit number of samples. So the big difference with like a BPM solution is going to be depending on how you configure the project. So I have a question, what's the difference with a BPM integration versus an RPA integration? So to start, how we integrate with third-party applications depends on the use case. A really great way to interact with Ephesoft Transact is through our API. So we can perform a REST web services call, which will allow you to connect to the existing Transact server and define what project that you're working with and automatically kick information back out. So we have great API tools available, especially within our latest version release with Transact 4.5. I highly recommend checking out our wiki page on Transact Web Services. However, we can also integrate with third-party applications through import and export plugins. We have quite a few import and export plugins for document data that exist for systems like SharePoint or Box or Infor. But we can also do exports to standardized formats into something like a hot folder where that BPM system or RPA system could watch it and pull it up from there. Question on how we handle unstructured foreign language content. So Ephesoft Transact supports a wide variety of languages. I'd highly recommend, and we can do a follow-up via email, our wiki page on supported languages. So it's just dependent on how we're OCRing that content. And we do have localized UI support in several European languages as well. So I'd recommend checking out that wiki, and JP, I'll follow up via email with a link for that for you. So no issues on foreign languages. We can support a wide variety of languages within a single project, multiple languages within a single project as well. I had a question about licensing. And we are not licensed on a per page or volume license. Ephesoft Transact is licensed by Server Core, so you don't have to worry about page count when you're processing documents. We license by Server Core, and we can make some recommendations on how many or how few server cores you might need to meet your SLA for processing documents, but there is no per page licensing. I do have another question on table extraction. Someone asked if we can perform tabular extraction, and absolutely yes. Table extraction is a key component of Ephesoft Transact. If you have a specific question about how we deal with tabular content, please feel free to reach out and we can address that specifically. I have a question on if a batch consists of different types and forms, can we automatically categorize or classify the form types? And absolutely yes. So Ephesoft Transact can identify and automatically categorize different form types once the project has been configured. So let's say you have an end user scan in a batch of 500 insurance claims, and there's a variety of claim forms, a variety of supporting documentation. Once we've built the project, what's going to happen is Ephesoft is going to take that 500-page file. It's going to automatically split that file up into individual page images, and then it's going to sort and identify and classify those pages based on how the project has been configured. So that automatic classification is definitely going to happen, and there's no limitation on how many document types you can create as a part of a unique project. All right, just a couple more questions, and then we're just at about time. I have a question if Ephesoft can detect a scanned image if it is tilted or inclined. And as a part of our OCR and image enhancement process, we do de-skew images to make sure everything is lined up accordingly, so that shouldn't be an issue. And then I have another question about how exceptions are handled when Ephesoft cannot detect a field or if it detects a field incorrectly. As a part of our document processing workflow, Ephesoft Transact is going to include a validation step. And if an individual document type or an individual field does not meet the confidence threshold that has been output by that machine or calculated by that machine and configured by the end user, then that particular field or that unique document type will be flagged for review by an end user. So an end user has an opportunity to verify, validate, or remediate any information that is either incorrect or unable to be detected. So, and that's something that we can follow up via demonstration as well. So I have several more questions that have been posted to the chat, and we are just about over time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have a note of all of these questions, and we will follow up via email, make sure all of your questions are answered. We'll also make this recording available, or I'm sorry, we'll make the webinar available as a recording afterward. It'll be sent out via email. So please do feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any questions. My email information is here on the screen. I'm more than happy to address your questions, put you in touch with someone who can answer them more specifically if I'm unable to do so, or to introduce you to one of my counterparts if you have specific questions about follow-up demonstrations or opportunities or use cases you're looking to explore. So thank you so much for your time, for your consideration. Look forward to connecting with all of you, and have a great afternoon.